morning, everyone. Thanks for joining me and Tria for number 36 of Where I'm From. What are you reading? That's the question I can always ask and answer. I'm currently reading A Mind Spread Out on the Ground by Alicia Elliott. She's a Mohawk writer. This is a memoir, and A Mind Spread Out on the Ground is a translation of depression, which is a fascinating way of thinking about it. Like, she talks about not being able to collect the pieces of your mind when you're in that state, which I feel like is apt. And it's a stunning book. I'm really just blown away by it. It was a Canadian bestseller, but I hadn't heard about it here until I was reading another book that referenced it. So I don't know if you've heard about it, but I recommend it.
Oops.
Hi, Tria. You're here, but it's just a blank screen.
I see that. Let me do some adjusting. Hold on.
Oh, there you go.
Hello. Just a little
Hello.
suspense for you.
Yeah, it was like, whoa. That's your avatar, is just
Yeah,
blackness. Uh-huh. It's,
it's my insides right
it's
now.
yeah, I was gonna say it's an apt metaphor for for how some of us feel.
Yes.
Yeah. So how are you other than that?
Very happy to be here with you.
Oh.
When you started and showed your books, I ran over to my
Oh,
bookshelf to
good. What are
get
you
what I was
reading? Because
reading.
I always want to hear what people are reading.
Yeah, right now I'm reading Post-Colonial Love Poem by Natalie Diaz and Obit by Victoria Chang, which I've been reading for a long time, but just kind of dipping
Mm-hmm.
in and out. Because of your prompt, I wanted to get a little more poetry in my body because it's been some time.
Me too. This has really been it's been a catalyst for me to read more poetry, and then people will send me poetry. Um, and it's funny because when I ask sometimes people to join me, they'll tell me they're not a poet, apologetically, and I'll say, well, neither
Yes.
am I. Like, no one involved in this really. I mean, some people are poets who have been on here, but most of us are just people expressing ourselves through poetry, which is what it's
Yeah.
for,
That's made the whole series feel really approachable to me. Otherwise, I would have said no when you invited me.
Right. As would I have to myself. It's like, no, I'm not serious enough for that. I don't have big enough words. And I posted somewhere that I don't even remember who it was, but talking about how poetry is like every line of poetry is like a whole scene, not just a line. And I loved that
Mm,
idea that poetry is so dense. It can be so dense with meaning and reference in
yeah,
a different way than
absolutely.
prose.
Yes, yeah, I totally agree. And I also want to set the expectations
Oh,
lower that my poem is not so dense with meaning. So,
no, but I think it's also just the way we read it too. It's the act of reading the poem and giving more attention to each word. It's a different experience. And I think it can just kind
yeah.
of slow us down and help us to just breathe and be present. And who doesn't need more of that?
Oh, yeah, I need so much more of that. So thank you for creating this space.
Oh, thanks for joining me. I'm thrilled you're here. And is there anything else you want to say before you dive in? Or
I just want to tell anyone who's watching this what a wonderful presence you are, Allison, in
oh,
all of these spaces that I've encountered you. I definitely feel a little bit shy and nervous when entering these Facebook groups, which is where
mm-hmm.
we met, because
Mm-hmm.
you enter and it's already thousands of people deep and you don't quite
It's
know
true.
how to make connections. But I feel like every time you post and comment, you
Mm-hmm.
create such a nourishing
Oh,
environment, and I'm just really grateful for that and for
that really
you.
means a lot. I thank you so much. And I try, and it's funny, really, I think one of the first times I saw your post, I don't know. I felt it's amazing that you can feel a connection even there. It feels kind of
Yeah,
counterintuitive because it's just words, but then again, that's what we're what we're doing with our time, right? Creating
it's
things with
true.
words. Um, but I was actually reflecting on it this morning, like, how is it that I feel like Tria is my friend? Even though we've never met, even
Yeah,
virtually. And
that's true. This is the first time.
yeah, I was like, why? I think partially you recommended the Hollaback webinars,
Yeah.
and those were really meaningful to me. And just, I feel like everything you recommend is really speaks to me, and there are lots of resources that people post that are valuable, but they just don't resonate with me maybe in the same way. Where things that you have shared, I'm like, oh yeah, Seventh Wave, Hollaback, like they've been really, they've just meant something to me. So
Oh, I'm so glad.
yeah. And
Yeah.
also, which is not related to the poem, but you're making Make America Eat Dinner Again. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Okay.
Make
Um,
America dinner
you
again.
make
Yeah.
America dinner again. You don't make them eat. You just make them dinner. It's a little too forceful. Um, that spoke to, because I actually hosted not your dinner, but a dinner similar before COVID. That was LA was encouraging people to make dinner and invite people over to talk about race, like how their
Mm,
experience of living in Los Angeles, with different racial backgrounds, what that's like, and just like moving through the world. But um, and I hosted one of those, and it was such a meaningful experience, and it was all people that I knew or kind of knew of, but not people I'd necessarily sat down and ever had a conversation like that with. And it's pretty incredible just sitting down with people in a space that is meant for discussion. You're not just like
yeah.
sitting down randomly, but we all came to talk about that. It was I love that too, that you did that. And um talking to people is really important and underrated.
It is, and intentional conversations where you're really trying to get beneath the surface. And
Hmm.
I could totally imagine you doing a dinner like that with this writing prompt
Oh
because it
yeah.
really kind of opens up some things about people's
Oh, that's such a cool
biographies.
idea. I'll have to do that when I feel comfortable enough having like a group of people in my house again. I'm not quite
Yes.
there. I'm definitely like slow on the, hey, let's just do stuff again.
Yeah. Maybe next summer. No
Yeah,
rush.
yeah, but that's a really lovely idea because it did, of course, I'm guessing your dinner did maybe as well have questions or prompts or things to discuss. And
Yeah. Some structure.
yeah, yeah, just like sit down and go like, hey, so what's it like? It's not,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Structure can help hold people, I think.
I think so for sure. It helps me with my writing, and I think it does help. It's like you have something to lean on, to fall back on if you're feeling unsure. And by the way, this just popped in my head. Tria's website is beautiful. I highly recommend you go check it out if you want website ideas. I looked at it before I created your little, like, join me and Tria, who is a writer.
Oh.
And um, your land acknowledgement is beautiful.
Thank you so much. I actually just updated the
That's so
website, and I
beautiful.
want to shout out my poet friend, Danny Ryu, because it was their land acknowledgement on their
Hmm.
website that made me feel like I'm really missing something. I didn't have anything there before,
Hmm.
so I cannot take credit.
I
But
don't
yeah,
have
thank you
anything, and
for
it made me
visiting.
like, oh, I want to have something too. So it's like a kind of, it pays forward. You see something, you think, oh, I want to, and I love that San Francisco has a program that you can pay. Do you say Shumi? Is that how you pronounce that?
Yeah, yeah, I
Uh,
think so.
like land reparations. I have been trying to find a place like that in LA to no avail.
Mm.
And I donate to other things, but I just love the in the intentionality of donating, like in my case, to the Tongva people for
Yeah,
residing on their unceded land. Um,
yeah.
so
Yeah, I think it's important for us to just understand whose land it is
mm-hmm.
and what we're occupying.
Mm-hmm. And looking into the history of how that land was, I mean, oftentimes
Yeah,
unceded, and in this situation, not a federally recognized tribe, and the history of why the federal government did that. Sort of just understanding how many different layers of erasure were used on the
yeah.
indigenous people of
Yeah,
this.
I'm only starting to learn that now because it definitely was not taught in my school growing
No,
up.
No. I mean, in third grade, it was like third, fourth, it's the missions, like, oh, aren't they great?
Yeah.
Missions, like,
Yeah.
thank goodness they came and, like, settled California.
Mm.
And as my children have gone through some of that curriculum, it is taught very differently, at least in the schools they're attending, and the cost of the missions on the Native population, and how it wasn't just, good old Catholic caring, which is, I feel like, how it
Mm.
was pitched to us, you know,
Yeah.
which is like, whoa. I mean, my mom was at home going, that's some nonsense. Don't believe that. Um, but,
It's good.
oh,
Good you
yeah.
had her.
Yeah, I mean, she just, deconstruct the concept of missionaries. She didn't say it that
Yeah.
way, but, sit with that. Think about that. Where are missionaries going and why?
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
so anyway, I wanted to just mention your land acknowledgement because I was really struck by it, and I thought it was a beautiful and fairly easy way to say, here's where I am, here's where I have to thank for this land, and thank them.
Thank you, Allison.
Yes, that was a tangent, but so anything else before you begin?
I think that's it for now. I can just dive in if
Okay,
you'd
I'm
like.
excited.
Okay. Where I'm from. I am from VHS tape spooling to snow over time, from Joni Mitchell's greatest hits and vinyl from 1966, black as the soil in my parents' garden. I am from the ocean of my mother's imagination, a sea that is the sky, a sky that is the sea, air savory with the salts of our next meal, a wake up from a dream. I am from seeds scattered generations before me, roots reaching across thresholds of death and new life. I am from passing stories around the dinner table and serving others before ourselves. From Mommykins and Bopperoni, Jeegers and Uri Burry, from expressing so much love through nicknames, our given names became starlight, emitted only by those outside our constellation. I'm from the fluff of cloud where I first saw my fam. Floating in my mother's space, I swear I could hear her voice echo, telling my sisters she was making someone just for them. I'm from beliefs in everything and nothing, certainty that we all must be at least a little wrong. I'm from Washington, D.C., more or less 99% Chinese. A bushel of summer crabs tumbled onto newspaper, not dry with Old Bay, but drenched with ginger soy vinegar. From the night, two strangers talked until dawn, and the days they filled with paper flocks of who they could be. In the basement of my childhood home, my fingers twist the dial of a time machine, adjusting VCR's fuzzy tracking. For a few seconds, Mama laughs herself back to life, waving among daffodils. Her future, now past, is still ahead of her there. The snow melts, reveals endless spring.
Just beautiful, Tria. I'm very excited to read your book.
Oh, thank you,
Whenever
Allison.
that happens, I'm so excited. I just, what, like a magical poem. I felt so transported. Magical feels mundane, but that's the word that came to mind. It just feels really I I love it too, Laura and Lisa. I
Thank
and
you.
Michelle. It was just like I felt really transported to this other place that was so visually stunning. The daffodils and the crabs and your mother. What a gift. What a tribute to your mother. I felt like I felt so much of your love for her, um, and it's so difficult to talk about grief and those people who are no longer with us or who they once were. And I thought you did that in a way that was so it allowed us space for our own emotions, our own experiences of those things. And I think that's special in writing and in life. Those experiences where someone can share a piece of themselves and allow us to meet them with our own self.
Thank you so much. I'm glad that you were able to experience that space. And yeah, I as soon as I started reading, actually, I had this little pop-up that notification that told me you've spent your 15 minutes on Instagram, because I have one of those timers that tells me to get off Instagram. So I hope it wasn't too interruptive. I had to just
No,
dismiss that as
no,
I
that's funny though.
read.
Something always has to happen. I feel like it's not
Yes.
an Instagram live if something doesn't happen. It's just sort of, it's charm. No, I didn't even
Yeah.
notice. I was too immersed in the
Oh.
experience. What was it like for you writing the poem?
Yeah, well, again, thank you for the invitation. It was a big shift for me because I recently finished a big revision of my memoir manuscript, and I've been with that work, thank you, for over 7 years now, and
Yeah.
it's just been, in development and editing, revising, throwing things out constantly. So this felt like a really different kind of exercise. I didn't want to agonize over it. So for me, I did one pass first where I filled it in like Mad Libs.
Hmm.
And then I revisited a couple weeks later when I had time, and I read it and I thought, this is very bad. I will not put Allison through reading this. So I
I doubt that
when
it
I
was very bad, but
revisited,
I understand the impulse to feel that way about our own.
it was a little painful, a little painfully bad, but I kind of did another pass over it, and I do like to follow rules, or I feel compelled to follow rules.
Hmm.
So I think my first iteration was very by the rules,
Yeah.
and then the second time I wanted to still follow them, but just leave a little more room for interpretation.
Hmm.
Did a little more reading of poetry, and then so
Oh,
this is just my second draft, and I
good for
really don't
you.
like anything I've written until I've revised it 10
I
times.
know.
So to
Right.
me, it's still bad, but I thought just focus on this as an opportunity to
Hmm.
connect with Allison in this space rather than trying to impress anyone. So that has been really freeing and
It's
just a
good
lovely
for us,
feeling.
right?
It is. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I try to create that space. Like for sure, I thought it was funny because Tria, when she sent me the poem, was like, "So I stopped messing with it,"
Yeah.
and a lot of people when they send me their poems say something similar, but then a lot of them will send me another one later. Like they couldn't, like where I am a person who I've sent it. Okay, I'm done. Like I'm
Yeah.
not gonna touch it again because I'll go do something else and it'll leave my brain. I'll just move on. But it's just, you didn't send me another draft. I wasn't sure if I'd get one this morning. Like, well, actually,
I was trying to be strict with myself
yes,
and
yeah.
with your time.
Well, I understand what you're saying about wanting to revise it, but I do think there's real power in just kind of going with the initial feeling of completion. Like, this is complete enough. This
Yeah.
is, I think there is real, like, and that's sort of what I'm here for too, to be honest. Like I love hearing that. I'm not here to critique. That's another thing. Sometimes people will email me and tell me, "Oh, if you have suggestions." I don't have suggestions. Like I'm not. That's not who I am um, in this space, or hopefully not very many spaces. Like I just want to be a witness.
Mm. Oh, that's so beautiful and generous, really.
Yeah.
That's what I love about this space, because you create an opportunity to write a poem, not for publication or, yeah, it feels like it's just for connection and for nurturing
Mm-hmm.
creativity.
Mm-hmm. I'm
Yeah.
glad you feel that way. I do. I was just speaking last week with someone about this, and I was saying, I have been really struck by people saying thank you because to me, I want to say thank you. It's kind that people say thank you, but it's giving me. It truly is like a source of joy, and I just started on a whim, and it's just been so. I have loved creating, not creating, but communing with people and having these moments. It's just been amazing for me, and for me, it has helped me realize how many people just want a minute where they're seen and heard.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think that's the most sustainable kind of literary citizenship. You know, we're always looking for
Mm.
opportunities where we can be good literary citizens, whether it's buying books or supporting each other's work. But when you're doing something that feeds your spirit and energy too, you can just keep it going. You're on
Mhm.
number 36 now, so I
I
think
know,
that's
and I'm
amazing.
scheduled to like 50 or something. I mean, it's just
Ah,
really,
that's great.
yeah, it is. And the same person I was talking with was like, "Oh, you should reach out to my friend who's just written this book." And 30 ago, I would have been like, "I don't, who am I?" Now I'm like, whatever, they can either do it or not. Like it's not really about, it's not about whether I have value or this has value. It's just if they're interested, which is a good
Yeah,
lesson for life. It's
it
not
is.
personal. It's whether
Yeah.
you're appropriate for them right now or not. And I completely agree with you about sustainability in general. Like what we do with our energy. I've thought about that a lot more in the past couple of years. First, because a friend brought an exercise about like how can we be sustainable in the social justice space, because it's a lifelong commitment. It's not a I showed up to this protest or I donated this, or how do we, and what's sustainable is the thing that feeds us too.
Hmm. Absolutely.
We
I just
can't
saw
just
my,
go ahead.
oh, I was just going to say I saw my big sister join, so I wanted to say
No,
hi.
please do.
Yeah.
um yeah, and that idea about if it comes easy to us, it still has value.
Hmm. Yeah. I know there is something about the writing life where it feels like struggle is the only place where we can find value, and it's really lovely when you can find things that do feel good and natural and come easily.
Mm-hmm. And there you doesn't, like, for me, I'm really trying to like flip the switch in my brain of like it doesn't need to be difficult to have value. I don't
Mm.
need to grind for it to be useful. Like,
Yeah.
because we each have different gifts, and then how do we share them with like doing the least amount of work? You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't mean to be like really hard all the time. Like,
Yeah.
that is not, it's not good for any, and it's also like, work-life balance or whatever word you want to use. Like, I want to hang out with the people I love. And that's good
Yeah.
for the world too.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to ask you about work-life balance and specifically caretaking,
Mm.
because as I was writing this and my memoir as well, I'm thinking a lot about motherhood, what it means, especially in light of, the ongoing nightmare with the Supreme Court. Like, what does it mean to carry a child? What does it mean to mother a child? And I I haven't gone on that journey yet because I wanted to write this book first and get that
Hmm.
out of my body
Yeah, I get that.
first. And yeah, I've been very lucky that I've had that choice.
Yes.
But I think a lot of me has been fearful because my mother did give us everything. And I saw that she had a lot of dreams that she would kind of set aside for our needs.
Hmm.
And I was taught that, okay, you're here for your family, for your friends. And for a long time, I still have a lot of trouble finding value in myself outside of the context of serving others. And I still
Hmm.
think it's important and meaningful to do things for others, to care for others. But finding my own agency within that journey has been really hard for me as a writer, and I feel like I've just kind of gotten there. So I'm only just starting to feel ready for motherhood, but I'm
Hmm.
also nervous.
Hmm.
And I saw on your website you mentioned how kind of after motherhood you took a little break, and then when you came back it sounded like you found your voice in ways that you hadn't before motherhood. And I just wanted to ask you how that went for you.
Well, that's a great question. It's so personal, but first, I totally agree with you. The power of having it be a choice is really the most important thing. Like, I'm choosing motherhood is such a different thing than having it forced on you. I can only imagine what kind of emotional turmoil that would. Like, I chose it. I wanted to be pregnant at that time, and we were very deliberate about it. And it's funny, I had made a film You wrote your book. I had made a film. I had traveled festivals with it. I'd done all the things, and it seemed like the time. And yeah, I did take time off. I took years off. I, in fact, was like, I'm done. I have nothing more to say. No one cares what I have to say. It was very deliberate. Again, I'm using that word, but it was. I realize now, with hindsight, I was dealing with a lot of trauma from my childhood, from the business, from my graduate school experience, and I just really had nothing more to give. And speaking of sustainability, the way I was approaching my career was not sustainable. I was really trying to write things that other people would like. It's not great. I was
Mm-hmm.
having a conversation, this the same person last week, about, we both went to grad school like 15 to 20 years ago. And back then, very much it was like, you need to write something or make a film, in my case, that everyone likes.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone was white men, right? Straight cis white men. And no one says that because it's just assumed, but that's what it is. And I tried really hard to do that while also maintaining my voice, which is feminist. And I write a lot about sex and power. So that wasn't not great. I'm trying to like write a romantic comedy or, a thriller, but also keep all these things that are really important to me, which is always a woman determining her future. She's always the main character. She's always sexually in charge and making choices for herself. And when she's not, that's a plot point, not something that is just brushed under the rug. And when I came back to writing after having my kids, it was like I was a different person, but I also think the niche reality of media now was a different landscape. It was like I had the revelation of, oh, I'm not writing for everyone. I, in fact, am writing for none of the people pretty much that I was writing for before, who hated my stuff. I mean, they liked it. They would say like, oh, that woman is hot. That was a good compliment I'd get. And, oh, that's like clever or interesting. But they weren't engaged with it. And I realized that I just really kind of wanted to write stuff for myself, which is my audience. Someone like me, however you want to say I am, but like women mostly. And women who've maybe been through some of the same things I've been through, or who view the world in a similar way that I view it. And that was very liberating. And honestly, I had to make peace with like, oh, I'm probably not going to sell a script for all this money. I'm probably not going to be important or significant, which were things I was really grasping for when I was in film school. It was like, there were not a lot of women in my program, and we were certainly encouraged to see each other as competition, which was super unfortunate. We should have been encouraged to see each other as peers and support and community, but we weren't. It was like, there's room for one lady. Which one of is it going to be?
Yeah.
So it was it was a seismic shift for me. And I hear you about not defaulting to being of service. And then how do you find yourself in that space?
Right.
It's real.
And how do you keep your writing time? And I think there's something about writing, maybe particularly creative nonfiction, that can be viewed as self-indulgent
For
or,
sure.
yeah. And so it feels you have to battle this, the negative connotations of selfishness as you dive into your work and give yourself those hours. And even finding those hours, I imagine, is so challenging as a caretaker, as a mother. So
yeah,
I'm glad you've done it.
yeah. And to me, it's interesting because I think obviously like in some of the Facebook groups where people talk about this, and for me, I had pushed myself so hard for so long. It was actually a relief to stop.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't
Yeah.
resent it. Like, motherhood was a huge adjustment. I'm not gonna lie. And you can't really prepare yourself for it. It's not something that you can like try camp. What you know, like it's not there's no mom camp. You know, it's and I think that's one of the hardest things about it. It's immersive. And you can't practice being immersed. You are. You can't practice what it's like to be under, you know, it's just but I didn't resent it. It was what I needed to
Yeah.
to step back. It was honestly a huge break to make someone else a priority.
Yeah.
And um, and it was what and my personal life, like there was a lot of death happening in our life, and it was a difficult
Mm.
and I feel very grateful that I was in a position to spend as much time with my children as I did, and I had a very supportive partner who, if any point I had said I need this time, I need to do, you know, would have supported me. It was not
Mm.
like you must stay home now. This is your life. You know, it's always been a conversation, and I would say to you, as I have to all of my friends who stayed home, like you got to do what makes you the best parent, and that
Yeah.
includes being a person who has dreams and a life, whatever that is. You know, if it's writing, if it's work, if it's friends, like we don't want to model self erasure. That's not what we
Yeah.
want to model. You know, we want to model um, love and caring and all of these things. Of course we do, but that doesn't mean that we no longer exist.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah. I definitely feel myself getting to that point that you mentioned of wanting to put my focus on someone else. So if and when that does happen for me, I will email you for
oh,
advice.
please!
And yeah.
I like I'm happy to talk. And also, like, it's so important to have some people in your life who have been through it who are like, it'll get easier. You know, I had a friend who was like, it'll get better at 6 weeks, then it'll get better at 3 months and six, you know, and I would hold those in mind because I was not great with sleeplessness. I
Mm.
think some people
Yeah.
are better at it than me. Uh,
I'm not.
I am not. I am like a person who loves sleep, loves
Yeah.
it. And
Me too.
it was really hard and it feels sort of mundane, right? Like, and we would joke about it. And I found a group of mothers who, many of whom are still my friends, and we talk a lot about it. And it was so important to have friends who were in it with me and
Hmm.
who it's like those Facebook groups talking about writing. It has been so
Hmm.
important to just there's always people there talking about it. And you feel less alone that knowing they exist and they're challenged with the same obstacles or you
Yeah.
know personal issues and that you can ask like you can just show up and say hey what did you do or how did you feel or in the writing world like I said to last week to the same person like what do you think about imposter syndrome you know which is something we sort of all throw around and we all deal with and she had such a beautiful answer she said you know I'd invite you to ask yourself what an imposter is.
Mm. Yeah.
And that,
Yeah. That's, yeah, it's powerful. And it's so, I agree, it's so important to have, especially in kinds of work that can be invisible, like parenthood
yeah,
or writing, when you're working on a project that's not going to see the light of day for years and years, or maybe ever,
right.
just to have other people going through it to make the work feel less invisible and more real.
Mm-hmm.
It's so helpful.
And
So,
taking it
yeah,
seriously and taking you
yeah,
seriously. For me, that's a huge shift too as a writer. Like, I'm a writer, I do this. Maybe not in the way
yeah.
you do it or other people, but I am doing it. And just having people in my life who believe that and take me seriously helps me. And it's the same thing with motherhood. Like, being a mother is not about giving birth, you know? That's a really like limited view of what being a mother is or a parent. And it's
Mm.
important to have people in your life who view parenthood the way you do, who
Hmm.
have the same value system, you know, who don't just like default, well, you gave birth to it, so you must be its parent. You know, that's not like that's only the beginning. And for many, that's not even how parenthood happens.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, these are deep questions. But I'm really excited for you and that you're even thinking it. And if you're even thinking about all these things, which having choice gives us that time and opportunity to think about these things, which is
Hmm.
such an important part of choice, is that to prepare ourselves for this complete life shift. And and of course, like I am very incensed by what's happening with at the Supreme Court because we are now not full citizens of the United States. That's upsetting, but it's also all the little things
Hmm.
that are being erased. That this thing that's going to change your life forever, even if you give that child up for adoption, it will change you. Is being completely discounted as,
Yeah.
oh well, you give birth, you're a woman, and or you're a transgender man, which nobody's, I mean, those legal conversations aren't even including that, or a non-binary person. It's just, it's, I mean, it's, it makes a person want to scream, also cry, which I've done both.
Yes. I know we were emailing and just, I think on the day the news came out, and we're just saying like, oh, thank goodness we have this little um, IG Live escape from what's going on,
Yeah,
but can't really escape it. So even
no,
though, yeah,
which is how it's
even
designed
though
to work.
exactly, but I'm glad we could find little pockets to kind of
Mm-hmm.
get at it from different angles and also just talk about some other things as well.
Yes. And it's definitely, my consciousness has shifted. I used to think stuff like this wasn't important. Like it goes with the whole sustainable thing. Like it had to be
Yeah.
difficult to be important, where just speaking, being seen and heard is an act of, that's revolutionary.
Hmm.
It is.
Yeah, and the work writers do is so important, sharing the stories and how these
Yes.
laws and societal
The voice.
systems affect their lives and
Mm-hmm.
the lives of their characters if they're writing fiction.
Yes.
But also, everyone vote.
Yes, that too.
Vote, protest,
Always.
everything. Yes.
Always. So any other last, I just am so pleased to meet you, even though this is not the same thing, but it's just lovely to meet you. And I thank you for all the light that you bring into the spaces that you're in. And I feel like hope, and um, it's just a joy to be in community with you. So I thank you.
Absolutely, same to you. I don't think I have anything else except just another big thanks. And yeah, I'm looking forward to watching more of these on your series.
Well, I have fun doing them. So I hope you have a lovely day. And like I said at the beginning, I am very excited to read your book whenever that time comes. So I wish you all the best with it, whatever point in the process you're in. And I have no doubt it'll be wonderful.
Thank you so much, and absolutely same to you.
Okay. Bye, Tria.
Bye, Allison. Thank
Thank
you.